was going to start my talk by thanking Damien and Myrne for inviting me here today, but having to follow that. No, sincerely, I want to say thank you to them and also to say congratulations on a very, very interesting day. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I want to say how wonderful it is to see so many people here. I realise that it's late in the day, so I'm going to make this short. And before I begin, a reflection. We've talked a lot about motivations and behavioural science and changing behaviour and all of that. The key thing when it comes to changing behaviour, and this is an area I do most of my research in, it's not essentially about the motivations, although the motivations are extremely important. It's about reducing the barriers. That's the key thing that you need to figure on and find out what they are. And essentially you need to make cycling the easy choice. That's what will essentially make the difference for any population you are dealing with. So what I'm going to talk to you today is about school children's active travel, and I'm going to look a little bit about the gender differences in that. A lot of what I'm going to say has already been said, and it will support what has already been said. First of all, I'm going to look at the target population, a little bit around health-enhancing physical activity, and summarise then what we can learn from a study that I have had the privilege of being involved in. Who's our target population? When we come to school-aged children, just to remind you, any child that plays sport or doesn't, any child can benefit from walking or cycling and engaging in what we call active school transport. In actual fact, our Department of Health advises us that, and you can download these recommendations from this website here, advises us that every day we should be active at an intensity that is moderate to vigorous in its level, i.e. it gets you out of breath. If you're an adult, 30 minutes or above. If you're a child, a minimum of 60 minutes. And the type, it doesn't really matter as long as you are active. And this is for your heart and your lungs, your cardiovascular. That does not mention strength nor conditioning, which are also extremely important, as is flexibility. But that's our guideline. Frequency, intensity, time and type, it stands for FIT. That's what it means. Back to basics. Physical inactivity is killing people every day. In actual fact, we now have evidence to put physical inactivity as the fourth leading risk factor for premature mortality. And we know that 3.2 million deaths, preventable deaths, happen every year due to physical inactivity. 3.2 million deaths annually. And 32.1 million dailies. These are disability-adjusted life years. So if you get a heart attack at 40, we spend the next however many years looking after you on medication and so on, but you're living with a disability. 32.1 million disability-adjusted life years are accrued. Physical inactivity is fourth only after high blood pressure, tobacco use, and high blood glucose. It is a modifiable risk factor. It is something we can do something about. The reality is here. If we sit down, don't engage in physical activity, it leads to chronic diseases, overweight and obesity being one of numerous. But if we get on our bikes, get active, it leads to health, and it leads to healthy lifestyles. So what about children? I was part of this study in conjunction with the University of Limerick and University College Cork. We went to all of these schools over Ireland and we met children. We collected data in questionnaire form, we interviewed children, we used accelerometers to measure energy expenditure. And the study was sponsored by or funded by the Irish Sports Council. You can download it from the Irish Sports Council's website. So if you go onto their research page, you can download the report along with a lot of other really interesting research they have up there. But what did we find? In this study, we met over 5,000 children. I'm going to look at the post-primary data, which was over 4,000 It was about 4,100 children. And I'm going to look at the self-report in relation to cycling behaviours. In relation to the health guideline for this age group, i.e. 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every day of the week, we found that 14% of our 4,000 children met that criteria. This meant that 86% were insufficiently active for their current and their future health. Now this was self-report data, but we substantiated this by doing an accelerometer-based study where each child wore an energy expenditure measurement device, and it validated our results. 1 in 4 children were unfit for their age and their gender, were overweight or obese, and had elevated blood pressure. But we found that the more active the children were, and this is meeting the guidelines 0, 1, 2, 3, up to daily per week, the better the individual's health profile. There was a direct and linear correlation. The more active the child was, the healthier their profile. What do we know? We know increasing physical activity and decreasing sedentary behaviours are key factors to promoting the health of our young people and our children. Cycling can help. What has this CSPA, the Children's Sport Participation and Physical Activity, told us? Cycling can help. How? Children cycle for exercise, children cycle for sport and leisure, and children cycle for transport. It was mentioned earlier, there are lots of different ways to cycle for this age group. We asked kids to give us, in the last 7 days, out of a whole list of activities, tick which ones you engaged in. For boys, just under 2,000 completed this. For boys, the most popular activity they engaged in was soccer, followed by cycling. They ticked cycling as the most, or one of the most popular activities in the past 7 days that they had engaged in. Girls, the same questionnaire, the same sheet, and we know that this instrument is reliable. Validity I'll come back to, but we asked the kids in the past 7 days, out of this list of activities, which ones have you engaged in? We don't know if it was for 5 minutes, 50 minutes, 3 hours, we don't know. We just want to know, did you get on a bike or not? Did you kick a ball or not? Did you play basketball? For girls, again, cycling, you can see, is quite high. It'd be great if it was higher. It's around about between the 20-25% mark or thereabouts. But still, children are telling us that mountain biking, road biking are something they want to engage in. Something they'd like to engage in. What we see when we look at the gender differences in participation, we see that, of course, and this has been shown in the other work today, boys are significantly more likely to engage in it than girls. So we wondered, later on in the questionnaire, we asked the children, what clubs do you get involved in? We didn't give them a list this time, we just said, name a club that you get involved in. So we're looking for now cycling. Did cycling get mentioned by these children? Are they part of cycling clubs? Oh no, sorry, I'm not that far yet. Sorry. Out of this data set here, the number of children who cycled for exercise, among the boys, right, it was 49% reported cycling for exercise. This was in the general physical activity question. Out of this 49%, most of them, 68%, said they also cycled road biking or mountain biking for sport or leisure. So what I've called those is the consistent cyclers. But very interesting for me was 1 out of 3 of those young boys between the ages of 12 and 18 indicated that the reason or why they were cycling was for exercise. That was their main behaviour. Not for transport, for exercise. It's very similar with the girls. 32% of the sample, remember it was over 2,000 girls, indicated cycling in the past 7 days for exercise. Again, out of that, 69% said they also be engaged in mountain or road biking, But the remainder, or 31%, said the main, or what they cycled in, was for exercise. So club engagement. How many of these kids are getting involved in clubs? 17. Out of 5,000, out of 4,000, there was 4,000 post-primary. Out of 4,000, 17 children wrote down that a club, they went to a club for cycling. The most important reasons they took it up was to keep fit, because of their school, something to do, because I thought it would be good, for fun or interest, and then one person said no reason. So my question here is, are our clubs lagging behind what our children want? Transport, cycling to get places. It's different to sport and leisure, so we're moving on. In terms of active transport for the sample, this is over 5,000 children completed this, and you can see the primary to school, primary post or from school, post-primary to school, and post-primary from school. Walking, cycling, car, bus, and train. If you add both of these together, you get 40% of the post-primary sample were actively walking or cycling to school. And that statistic is improved on the 2004 data when this was originally carried out. It's still quite a lot lower than we would see in Germany or in Denmark, for example, but it's comparable with some areas in the UK and other countries in Europe. There were no gender differences in active school transport in primary schools between boys and girls, but in post-primary, girls were less likely to engage in active school transport than boys. Only 3% of the total sample, supporting what Andrew said earlier, indicated cycling to or from school as a mode of transport. When you broke that down by gender, you can see it breaks down into, it's 3% overall, but it represents roughly 7% of boys or 6% of boys and about 0.3 or 0.5% of girls. So it's actually less than 1% of the girls were cycling to school. Out of 4,122 respondents. If you get children to cycle, it seems to sustain. They very rarely change schools, and the point was made earlier about recruiting. When do you recruit children if you want them to cycle? And the age range was flagged at a sort of 6th class. I'd say that's too late. We have bikes called Striders now. Children can cycle at the age of 2 and 3 now. Children need to cycle on their first day to school, provided they can do the duration, if their legs are strong enough. But definitely by the end of junior infants, children, if they can manage the distance, that's when you start them. And the habit is, when you have to get out and go to work in the morning, the habit is established that everybody grabs their bike, and you're not wrestling with the, oh no, I want you to take the car, Mum. In actual fact, it'll be, we're not taking the car, we want to go on our bikes. That's what you want to get from the children. So my advice there would be, move the cycle training back as young as you can. Where do they come from? The majority of our cyclists came from the suburbs and towns area. The real inner city, heavy density, didn't get as many, and obviously the very rural areas didn't get as many. Abby King and Jim Salas have said that it has become clear that motivations to be active can be thwarted by obstacles, including transport systems designed for cars as opposed to pedestrians and cyclists, increased technology at work resulting in sedentary jobs, lack of or poorly maintained parks and other green spaces, or zoning laws resulting in community designs that require driving. They're essentially talking about the built environment. among the workplaces, but the built environment is key here. We have supportive environments, physical environments. These are all Irish examples of good supportive design where the cycle lanes are structurally removed from the cars, where people come out of their houses and don't see cars first. They see bikes, they see footpaths, they see active environments, policy environments that promote and support active and sustainable transport. But we also have unsupportive environments that restrict physical activity, that lack the presence of footpaths or the other physical built environment factors that would promote walking or cycling. So we were interested in what our cohort of children think about their physical environment, their built environment as a place to walk or cycle. And we asked them 5 questions. And these questionnaires, I can pass these questionnaires on. We have them online. If anyone wants, if you're doing research, use them. They were developed by Jim Salas and colleagues in San Diego University. They've been used throughout the world, and we have data that we can compare our cohort with other cohorts throughout the world on them. But if you do want any questionnaires, just contact me and I'll pass them on. So we asked the kids 5 questions. So one was, there are pathways on most of the streets in my neighbourhood. And the answer to that was strongly disagree to strongly agree, a 4-point Likert scale. And there was 4 others, and this is what we found. So in terms of the inactives and the actives, there are footpaths on the streets in my neighbourhood. What do the children think? Well, children who don't walk don't think or are not as likely to agree that there are. The footpaths are well maintained. There are bike lanes easily accessible to my home. Kids who are active in their transport mode are much more likely to agree with that. The footpaths are structurally removed. We asked 2, 1 structurally removed by green space, 2 separated by traffic parked. And again, you can see significant differences. And this one, kids think it's safe to cycle. They do. They think it's safe to cycle, but there are barriers preventing them from getting out there. If only that bike lane was easier to get to, for example. So we asked them, active, inactive transport, how far is it to your nearest bike lane? And again, you can see active, or the inactives are these 2, and these are the actives. 1 to 5 minutes to a bike lane, 6 to 10 minutes. Look at the difference between those who are not walking or cycling and those that are. And this is where your difference lies. Kids who are not cycling do not perceive that there is a bike lane right beside them. As Andrew said in his earlier presentation, they come down the stairs, the bike rack is there, the bike pump is at the bottom of the stairs, they go out, and so on. We have the evidence. It's been converted into numerous reports. What we need now is the commitment to make the change in our built environment, and we will work on the behaviours to support that and the interventions to help people get out there and get active. So in summary, physical activity is good for health. Physical activity levels are low. Children engage in cycling for recreation, for exercise, and as a means of transport. Girls are significantly less likely to cycle than boys. Children who walk or cycle to school perceive their physical environment to be more supportive than those who don't. And children who live within 10 minutes, in actual 50% of those who live within 10 minutes of a cycle lane are significantly more likely to be actively commuting to school. Supportive environments work. We have the evidence. What we need is the commitment to change. 3 websites, folks, very, very useful information. on anything to do with active living or active living research or physical activity. Thank you very much.